We are going to be doing this live on ROKFIN where we can talk without worry that we're going to be booted off. And then we're going to pick a clip that will go on YouTube. So if you are watching this later on YouTube, why are you doing that? You should be watching it on my other platforms. But if you want to see the rest of this video, check out the links in the description and in the comment section so you can go see the rest of what Twila had to say. Okay, Twila, you are a registered nurse, and you're also the president and co-founder of Citizens Council for Health Freedom. So before we get into what you guys are doing with HIPAA, medical privacy, the vaccine mandates, the billboards, talking about the pandemic of the unvaccinated, all that stuff, can you tell me what it's been like as someone who's been pushing back publicly, very publicly against vaccine mandates, as someone who's also then being quoted in mainstream news? Do you feel like your local outlets are doing a fair job? I mean, at least you're there, you're quoted, which is better than a lot of people. Tell me a little bit about what it's been like working with the corporate news.
Well, it does happen that I get quoted, but I would say that more often than not, the corporate media does not come and knock on our door to get quotes. But we do have a reputation within the state of Minnesota, certainly, regarding privacy and regarding patients' rights and our stand for patient freedom. And so I think sometimes, that goes across the party lines, the liberal lines. I think everybody really wants to have patients taken care of the way the patient and the doctor want the patient to be taken care of. And I think everybody really, on the ground, most people, and even sometimes at the legislature, you can find both parties who really support privacy. So I think that's sometimes why we get quoted, is because there is that kind of crossover into things that people really care about.
Okay, so let's talk about HIPAA real fast and medical privacy, because as you just brought that up, that's one of the foci for your group. Mm-hmm. What are we missing when we walk around? I heard a lot of people at the beginning say when employers were going to be asking for vaccination, proof of vaccination, people would say, this is a violation of HIPAA. And then you'd hear people on TikTok say, it's not a violation of HIPAA. And here's why. Tell us about HIPAA and what kind of privacy do we really have?
So HIPAA has nothing to do with privacy except to get rid of privacy. That's really what HIPAA does. So it is like this major deception. I believe it's probably one of the most major deceptions foisted upon the American people, because it's been called the privacy rule. It's been, you have the HIPAA privacy forms at the clinic's office. You have the notice of privacy practices that are at the clinics and are at the hospitals. And so privacy, but it's not actually there. And so it's really much more of a security rule, which means that they promise to keep the data secure as they share it hither and yon. And they have so many entities that they can share it with. Just as an idea, I think back in 2010, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services put out a proposed rule, and they listed all the entities impacted by HIPAA. There are 702,000 what they call covered entities. And those are the people that you expect to have your data, like the laboratory, the clinic, the hospital, the health plan. Those are the people that hold the data because you gave it to them in some way, shape, or form. But then there are the 1.5 million business associates. And even the covered entities, that 702,000, can be business associates. And so all of these can have access to your information without your consent, and it's identifiable information if those who hold it, those covered entities, choose to share it. They don't have to get your consent. You can ask them if they would do that, but they don't have to agree to it. If they do agree to it, they can disagree to it later. They can, scrap that agreement. They just have to tell you, and then they can go on sharing. So HIPAA has nothing to do with privacy except to eliminate it.
All right. I did get a question from my locals community, and just a shout out, if you're watching this somewhere else, head over to AllisonMorrow.locals.com, because I post the interviews I'm about to do ahead of time, so you can put questions there, and I try to get to all of them. How can we curb Big Pharma's role in funding CDC NIH? Big Pharma has far too much power and influence. I, for one, hate seeing drug ads on TV, and I don't watch TV. I'm curious when it comes to privacy or the lack thereof, as you're talking about it, and this person discussing the role of finance, pharmaceutical companies, and government agencies. How are those aligned? Is part of the reason that we don't have the privacy we think we have in some ways incentivized by this problem, or are they totally separate?
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I think, pharma can take advantage of the fact that HIPAA allows data to be shared without your consent with the pharmaceutical companies if they choose to do so. But I think that HIPAA by itself, it's just much bigger and broader than pharma ever is or was. And that's, because your data today, medical data is, it's like gold. It's like the 21st century version of oil. And so everybody looks at medical information as, this huge pot of gold. As a matter of fact, United Health Group has a division that's called Optum Insights, and Optum Insights is their data division. That's all they do is data. So they look at people's medical records, they gather data, they parse data, they sell data, they everything data. That's all they do. They don't take care of any patients whatsoever. And their revenue in 2017 was $8.1 billion. So data is, everybody wants your data. And it's not just pharma, it's all sorts of other people who want your data. And they're so happy to have HIPAA. As a matter of fact, Minnesota has the strongest medical privacy law, and our organization is located in Minnesota. And for about the last 6 or 7 years, we have had to fight to keep our state privacy law. They want to HIPAA-size it. So they want to say that Minnesota will comply with HIPAA. Well, Minnesota does comply with HIPAA because states that have stronger medical privacy laws are the laws that have to be followed. But they want to say that we will conform with HIPAA and take all of our language out, which would then allow all the medical records of Minnesotans to be shared hither and yon, like they are shared around the rest of the country. And so, I mean, that's the Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Business Partnership, every corporation that you can think of that does data or wants data would like us to be under HIPAA rather than our patient consent law.
We will get to the rest of this video in just one second, but before we do, don't forget the holiday clock is ticking, and what better gift idea that allows you to support my work and free speech while also having a robust glass of Malbec and a piping hot cup of coffee. First, check out Allison with 1lwinepromo.com. You get 50% off some of my favorite high altitude Malbecs from Argentina, and one even comes from the oldest vineyard in Argentina. Plus, you get 50% off shipping. They pair very well with the desserts you will be having with grandma while you debate all of the hottest topics around us right now. Or, speaking of hot, have a hot cup of coffee with twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, also with 1L Allison. These are high altitude shade grown USDA certified organic Nicaraguan roast. The CEO and founder of the company lives right there in Nicaragua, where they grow, harvest, and roast the beans. There's also a Caturra tea. If you're a tea drinker, this is tea that you make out of the coffee fruits. You can have it hot or cold. I like to cold brew mine for 24 hours. Both options, the hot or cold, very good, as are the coffees, as is also the wine. So check out my sponsors and toast to free speech wherever you are this holiday season. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go? I really appreciate all your thoughts on everything that we've covered a wide range of topics.
The only thing that I would say is the unique patient identifier, and for people to understand, there's a big battle happening in Congress right now to give everybody one government issued ID. A national patient ID is another word for it. And that particular thing has been stopped by Ron Paul when he was in Congress, and now by his son Rand Paul, by prohibiting funding. But now that Democrats are in charge of Congress, there is some attempt to make it happen this year, but we're hoping it's going to be stalled. But that is an attempt to give us all a single government number for all of our medical records, making it a very highly trackable number, every piece of data in your medical records. And I would also say that whenever you get questionnaires at the doctor's office, refuse to sign them. Just refuse. I mean, we have an entire campaign to not sign the HIPAA part of the consent form, and you can find that in our patient toolbox. But also, those questionnaires are meant to collect on you, for the government and others, what's called social determinants of health, SDOH, a big campaign by the government to have the exam room become the surveillance tool, the place where all the data is gathered about your family, about what's in your home, about your relationships, about your money, about your income, about everything. To put that all into the electronic health record. The only other thing that I would say is I have a book called Big Brother in the Exam Room: The Dangerous Truth About Electronic Health Records. And the third printing will soon come out, depending on supply chain issues for paper, but it's about to go to the printer, and you can find it at bigbrotherintheexamroom.org. You can get on the list, and we will tell you when the book's ready. bigbrotherintheexamroom.org.